Hi ASL friends. So today I'm doing a helping ASL video, but FYI, this video really is more for hearing people because I think deaf people will already know what I'm going to say. And I actually wrote a transcript for this video because I thought it'd be helpful to paste it underneath and so that anyone could read it if they missed something or just for reference. So I'll probably be doing that. Of course, the little section below, description box, maybe. Sorry. Alright, so if I was to give what I'm going to talk about a name, it would be, it's like the building blocks of ASL, because that's what it is. But for reasons that I've never understood, the first thing you learn in ASL class after the alphabet is basic vocabulary. Food, household objects, family, etc. And except for family, which is important to know right away, I just don't get it. And the reason is, I think it's a strange way to teach the language, because when you you start taking ASL 3 or 4, you learn that there was a basic formula to signing almost everything in the language with just a few dozen hand shapes that most people use way more often than the technical signs for objects. Right. So I'm just going to try to stop signing now and just talk, because this is going to kind of be laid out like I'm talking to somebody who doesn't know sign language from this point forward. So the ironic reality of ASL is that even deaf people don't know how to sign every word in their working vocabulary. And like in English, when they don't know the word, they have a way to describe what they're thinking of, and other people can guess it. So the hand shapes are actually, they're just the letters of the alphabet for the most part, with a few that aren't the alphabet. But usually they're considered variations of it, like the flat B, which is just B but without the thumb. And we call them hand shapes if we're not using them to finger spell something or sign an initialized sign, meaning the letter is actually part of the sign, like the difference between breakfast and lunch. And of course, a lot of people sign breakfast as morning meal and lunch as noon meal, but you can't do it with the letters. Okay, in case you're rusty, here's the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Alright, now for the real point of this video. So when we use hand shapes to describe things, we call them classifiers. And in a textbook, you'll usually just see it written CL, capital. The most common classifiers are ones even hearing people use without thinking about it, such as this one, which is classifier D. When it's closed, it's just the pointer finger. You could also say it was G, I suppose. Depends on how you look at it. Classifier B, which people use all the time to describe things. Classifier C. Classifier F. Classifier I. And classifier O. Now you may be wondering, how can I use all these random shapes to sign instead of knowing the sign for something already? If you've never tried to sign in sign class before, you might be wondering that. Or if you're just in ASL 1. And well, the logic behind it is that these classifiers actually make up most of the signs you use. Which seems obvious, but it took me like a year and a half of sign classes to notice this. So, unless everyone else is smarter than me, maybe it's not completely obvious. Now take classifier B. This classifier is to describe large flat objects, like a box, a wall, a table, and a door. Or any object that looks kind of like one, but isn't. For example, if I wanted to sign folding table, I don't know the sign for it, or if there even is a sign for it. But I could make up one using the classifiers, and the other person would probably figure it out. Of course, I would also point to it. Always point to it if it's an object before you describe it. So like point, there's the table, and it folds. See? Makes sense, right? And when I signed box, wall, table, and door, did you notice that the B hand shape was in all of them? It isn't the official sign, it's in the official signs as well as being a way to get around if you don't know. In fact, the official signs can make things more complicated because the sign for box and for room and walls are different only because one is horizontal, walls or room, and one is vertical, box. In one conversation, you could probably guess what I meant, even if I used the wrong sign. But in class, you're supposed to know the difference. So it's easier if you keep a picture in your head of what you're trying to sign. Which also seems like obvious advice, but I think from the amount of trouble a lot of people have, the thing is they're just trying to remember the sign instead of visualizing what they're signing about. And part of the problem is they haven't learned that these building blocks are what you fall back on if you don't know. So the problem, and if you look at ASL's memorizing a code, I heard so many times in class, but I never understood what it meant. You'll always be stumped whenever you run out of memorized signs, and it takes years to learn even a few hundred for some people. Hopefully you're fast, but it takes a very long time. And, we only have standardized signs for like a few thousand in most dictionaries of sign language, which is way, way less than other languages, meaning that the variations between place to place are a lot more. So even if you know a lot of signs out of your dictionary, you might still find yourself having to rely on classifiers. If you start with these building blocks, you could start signing full sentences on your first day. For example, I showed you D, or the closed D, B, and C. I'm now going to sign a full sentence with just these three classifiers and show you how easy it is. Now what I said was, I walked to the door, turned the knob, and the door opened. Now, did you figure out what I was going to say or what I was saying before I finished or explained it? Probably some of you did, because it's pretty simple, isn't it? I mean, it looked like what it was. Would you believe you won't learn that basic of a sentence till the end of ASL 1 or even in ASL 2 in most college classes, which are long, obviously. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science, is it? But I never learned it till I was in the middle classes. It's like, what were my teachers thinking? I don't get it. Now, if I added the other 3 classifiers I showed you, I could make an even more complicated sentence very simply. So, classifiers F and O are both used to describe long, round objects, like a cylinder. O is used for big things like pipes, bars, a baton, etc. F is used for thin ones like a wire, a really small pipe, a pen, maybe. And for classifier I, it can be used in a similar way, but it's more for showing lines, thin lines. You know, like I might say a line, a line, a line, you know, like on a page. Or I might use it to show somebody wrote or drew an object instead of the object itself. Now I'll put those 3 signs into a sentence with the others. And could you figure out what that meant? I'll explain. So I opened the door, I pulled out 2 pipes. Big one and a small one. I got some paper and drew a picture of the pipes. Then I walked back and put the pipes down. You see, with C, that classifiers can also be used to show moving an object, especially more than one. For example, a single piece of paper is signed like this, but a stack of papers is signed like this. These are the classifiers you will see the most often, but there are ways to use hand shapes like A and E, but they'll be more specific. Usually A and E are used when B or D aren't shaped exactly the right way, or to imply what you're signing is thicker and wider than an object you'd sign with. I, for example, the sign for shape. You'd think you could make it with I, and I think that some people do make it with I, because it's just drawing lines. But it's more often to use A because you're kind of showing that the shape is a little bit bigger, wider. The other most common shape is U or H. I think it's called H, but it's usually without the thumb, so it's really a U. If it really is H, it's probably like B. It's used for flat objects. That's less common, but you can see it could be like a small stack of papers, maybe. Classifier U is used for things like a paintbrush, or to trace something, like you could do like a bookmark, maybe. It's mostly just a smaller version of the other ones. And then also important, this is one of the non-letter ones, but is classifier 3, which is used for vehicles, anything from bikes to trucks. Shows crashes, traffic lanes, directions, etc. And if you remember the first 6, you'll be able to sign almost anything that has to do with everyday life activities, if you get creative enough. It takes time to master the use of classifiers. It takes a lot less time than memorizing everything while still not knowing how to sign a sentence. I mean, people learn how to sign store way before they learn how to sign going shopping. It's just funny. All right. So, obviously, I use these classifiers a lot when I'm signing songs, and it was very, very helpful. In the first videos I made where I didn't really use classifiers, I would get stumped a lot, and I wish somebody had told me then what I know now. Also, there's a few signs that are good to use if you need to use classifiers. I think the most important one would probably be describe, because anytime you need to use classifier, you need to tell somebody, I'm going to describe the thing. You know, I'm not going to use the technical side, basically. And another important one is looking for, because most often that's what you're doing when you need to use a classifier. I'm looking for an object. But if you are talking about a person or an event, then you could say, what happened? You know? What happened? And then you describe, well, the person went that way, the car went that way, so on. Okay, so I think that is pretty much it for this video. And again, I think I'll try to post like what I said below the video. You know, like if you want to like practice this, I think that just trying to sign 3 to 5 sentences in a regular everyday life, just with the classifiers I showed you, would be a great exercise to practice this with. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment them below and share this video with somebody who's starting out in sign language or who's just been in sign language for maybe like one class, because I can almost guarantee they probably haven't learned this yet. It would save you so much trouble. And of course, if you want to see more ways to creatively use classifiers, you can check out my music videos, which I'll probably leave a link to somewhere in the end card, or my storytime videos. I'll probably put a link to that also. You know, I reuse them a lot in the storytime videos because there are so many things it's hard to just say with regular signs, it turns out. Anyway, like I said, I think that's all. Thank you for watching, and love y'all. See you next time. Peace out.